It's known as neurotheology or spiritual neuroscience. And breakthroughs in this area are really pointing us in the direction of the idea that spirituality is something that's beyond any religious institution. It's something that's very personal to everyone. Now, my theory has always been, and if you listen to this show, you've probably heard me say it. People may feel overwhelmed by their own spirituality. It's very powerful, particularly if you have spiritual experiences. If you have a dream or you have a mystical experience, or you just aren't sure what to do or what the truth is, and you don't feel like you can find these answers out for yourself, then you may use your spirituality and connect with a religious institution that you feel explains it for you and helps you to cope with it, use it. I think that's why a lot of people join churches, because rather than having to be sort of on your own or responsible for your own spirituality, once you join a church, you turn that over to the church. You turn that over to that religion. That religion tells you what you need to do as regards your spirituality. It tells you how you should think about things. And, it makes it all clear for you. But in truth, spirituality is never that cut and dried. And I think anybody, walking a spiritual path or who has interest in these things knows that. And most people in churches have moments of that kind of thought where they're saying, wait a minute, something's not right here. Something doesn't quite work here. Something's not ringing true. And those are moments they call moments of doubt or loss of faith. But they're actually also breakthrough moments when your spirituality is breaking through and, asking you to listen to it for a change rather than those that want to tell you how to use your own spirituality. But those are my thoughts on it. And I'm not anti-religion here. I'm not here to denigrate those who, are involved in religious organizations, organized religion. That there's a need for that. I think science has shown that people who do engage in those things have a healthier, happier attitude. Many good things come out of religious institutions. Help for the poor, community support, all of those things. And just as a place for people to go when they feel frightened or confused, churches can do, terrific things. So I'm not about, making fun of religions or denigrating them or people who believe in them. But what I'm saying is that religion and spirituality are two entirely different things. And to my mind, I think people are discovering this. And that's why you hear a lot of people starting to say that they are spiritual but not religious. And I believe that's a very important statement, by the way. Because once you start to engage in your own spirituality, you find that the universe itself and the world around you That's your church. That's what informs you. That's what helps you to grow. And so I think for, more and more people, the traditional idea of, God as this one sort of anthropomorphic being who is male and in some people's viewpoint has a long white beard and walks around in flowing robes, um, that this idea, is not only restrictive but pretty false and doesn't begin to reflect what the nature of a belief in God is. And I think more and more as we go on, people start to, first they start to leave the church. And I think the first step for many people is, if they begin to lose their belief in a religious system, then they become atheists. So God doesn't exist at all. If I can't believe in God the way I was taught, the way the church has taught me, then he doesn't exist at all. And somehow the alternate thought that, maybe the church had the idea of God wrong and taught you wrong, that doesn't seem to compute, at least at first. But for many, I think atheism is probably a necessary step to repudiate, organized religion entirely, because that clears the deck. And once the deck is cleared, and you don't have a particular belief in a particular way that spirituality or God needs to show up in your life, then it can show up in delightful and unexpected and fascinating ways. So to this point, I want to read you a bit of an article that's in today's Washington Post by by a man named Mr. Mike McHargue. I think that's how you pronounce it. He calls himself Science Mike. He's a fellow podcaster apparently, and he has a book out about this very topic: how finding God in the waves, how I lost my faith and found it again through science. And we've talked about on this program how, particularly through quantum physics and the understanding that we now are beginning to shape of how the universe works, how particle waves create our world, and how our thoughts, influence those particle waves. These findings are supporting mystical belief and the words and the beliefs that mystics have held for centuries. But anyway, let me get into this article a bit. Now, this is a guy who grew up in the Baptist church and felt that he'd lost his belief in God at a certain point in his life, and became an atheist. And he makes the point that some people find that a sense of relief and freedom in that. But he didn't feel that when he became an atheist. He said he felt like he lost his best friend because he was very connected to the church growing up. And he, as I mentioned, he's a Southern Baptist. He married a Southern Baptist, and they raised their children as Baptists. But he also had a strong interest in science and considered himself to be a geek. So he taught himself how to program computers at a very young age, and was a big Star Trek fan and all of that kind of thing. So science was important to him too. And then one day, apparently, his father had a family meeting to let them know that he was leaving his wife, their mother. And that was devastating to him, and he searched the Bible with a great deal of intensity, trying to find answers about, saving his parents' marriage, or why this was happening. And he couldn't find any. He says all he found were more questions, and piece by piece, he says his faith fell apart until he didn't believe in God anymore. And this caused him a great deal of grief. And was quite inconvenient for him, particularly since he was, at that point, I guess, a Southern Baptist deacon and a Sunday school teacher. And he went along, I guess, for a while pretending, because he didn't want to lose all of his Christian friends and, cause a stir in the community. And he continued teaching Sunday school. But he continued doing all of these things, not believing in it. And, whenever he could, he would gather online with atheists and skeptics to express his real beliefs. So living this sort of dual life was apparently very, very difficult for him. I'd imagine it would. Then he recounts an experience that he had on the beach in California after a conference. And he says he saw a bright light, and he felt God's love emanating through the very fabric of reality. And I like how he puts that, fabric of reality. Those are his words. That, just in his phrasing of that, is a recognition of the truth that there is a fabric of reality, which suggests that reality is not real but made up. But anyway, I don't want to get too far into that one. Anyway, he found that bewildering because he had already decided he didn't believe in God. And he thought he was maybe having some sort of a tumor or some sort of brain event. So he went home, he requested a CAT scan, and the doctor, the neurologist, didn't find anything. And then he decided he needed to find an answer to this elsewhere. And the next few years, he says he studied neuroscience and this neurotheology that I mentioned to you, and cosmology, and how and why humans experience what we call God in such powerful ways. He had a mystical experience, in that sense of connecting, that goes beyond any church or any belief system. And then he goes on to talk about one of the lead neuroscientists in this neurotheology movement is a gentleman by the name of Dr. Andrew Newberg. You may have heard of him or seen him on talk shows. He's got a book out called How God Changes Your Brain, and detailed studies he's done on the human brain and how it changes when people go into prayer or meditation, and so forth. And that also that belief in God lowers stress, can boost your empathy and compassion, and improve your concentration. So what he says, and this has to do with what I've been talking about here, and he says this very well, and I agree with him. Millions of Americans have discovered that the ideas about God they grew up with were too rigid to stay with them as they got older. 44% of us will undergo a faith transition